Any questions?
That's it?
Raise your hand for questions.
First time I get in front of you guys in 2.5 years. Perfect.
Todd, back in the spring when we had a chance to talk to Stetson, he talked about how valuable that spring could be for him, getting first team reps, kind of building relationships with the receivers. Even going back to then to right now, how do you think he has capitalized, or if he has capitalized, on this time he's had getting all these first team reps?
For sure. I mean, being with the first group, being expected to be the starter, so it's invaluable. I think his confidence level is raised with our confidence in him. I think it's probably the most important thing.
Coach, have you ever run an offense with 4 tight ends on the field at one time? And what could that look like in Georgia if that happens?
Well, if you run it too often, you get every wide out in the portal, so you can't do that a lot. So we do have good players at that position, and you do have to utilize their skill set. But it also, you have to balance that because there's a cost to that. Because it's one thing to say we're going to utilize 13 personnel, 14 personnel, and it's like, okay, well, what all can we do out of it and execute? That's probably the toughest thing, is how do you get through practice and execute, how you want it to look once you get to the game. And, that happens a lot in offense and defensive meetings where a defensive coach will say, boy, that really gives us problems. It only gives you problems if we can execute it. If it gives us problems as well, then it's really not worth anything. So, but we do have good players there. We do have to find a way to get them on the field and use all of our talented players.
Yeah, Todd, Stetson has said that he feels more comfortable now that he's the guy in terms of telling receivers how he wants them to run routes and things like that. I was wondering, between you and Stetson, how much has that relationship developed in terms of y'all discussing the finer points of the offense, how you want him to run things, all that kind of stuff, now that he's kind of the unquestioned starter?
Well, he's always been in there, so he's always heard how we want to do it. So now it's a matter of, I think he's doing a much better job of in between his reps of carrying the message that we talk about and to make sure we're on the same page. I think that's the biggest thing. It's not him talking to the receivers in terms of how he would do it. It's that we're all on the same page carrying the message from our meeting room to on the field. And I think that's a sign of leadership, is going over there and, how did you see it? Well, this is how I saw it. This is how we talk about it. Let's get it right.
Hey, Todd, one of the, storylines out there, whether it's right or wrong, I got no idea. But some people suggest that the offense is going to need, carry the team while the defense, until the defense, all the young players kind of gets its footing a little bit. Is that something you would necessarily agree with?
I really don't know what that means. And in fact, we got good players on defense. Sure, we lost a lot of really good players, but I don't think that changes for us. I don't think last year we thought of it that way, other than all we control is how often we get the ball and how many times we score when we have the ball, points per possession. That's all we control. Obviously, last year, there were scenarios where it made no sense to continue to put ourselves at risk. And that may not be the case this year. That may be the case this year. I don't know. That is to be determined. But carry that's ridiculous in a place like Georgia. We have good players on both sides of the ball, just like last year. To say that the defense needed to carry us is probably unfair. But we're tremendous on defense. I get what you're saying with that. I don't mean to be rude. I'm just saying in general, I think I think we get carried away with overall points and overall statistics or carrying things over. Ultimately, each game is where you have to continue to score points and stop people. You get into averages, it's not any good if you score 50 one week and 25 the next. You'd like to be more consistent and right there in the middle every week that you can count on that, just like whatever happened last year has nothing to do with this year.
Hey, Todd, last year you guys seemed really hamstrung by injuries out there at the wide receiver position. Now that you have a little bit of an older group, and as of right now it seems relatively healthy, how do you envision going about incorporating them in the offense and getting the most out of them with seemingly a more healthy room this year?
Well, I mean, we lost George last year, and maybe in some ways that made us better. In some ways once George went down, we had to figure out, okay, we don't have an X. We don't have somebody that you can just say, okay, we go 3-by-1 and they kick their coverage, we can throw it there. So You have to get into more tightened sets, condensed sets. How are we going to run the ball better? How are we going to use our tight ends? Not knowing exactly at the time what we had in Brock Bowers or A.D. Mitchell or whoever you have, but at the end of the day, you figuring out the puzzle is probably the number one thing we're paid to do, and no one really cares who you have. We do have more options at receiver, probably in some spots, but at the end of the day, whether it's using our backs, using our tight ends, using our receivers, I mean, that's what you're paid to do, and figure out a way to score and not turn it over.
Coach, specific talking about wide receivers, Aryan Smith, it's incredible. I think 3 of his career 5 receptions are for touchdowns and long ones. Is that, I assume a lot of that is a function of health and not being able to stay healthy to this point, but where have you seen development in him, and can you just talk about where he might fit in the grand scheme of things in the wide receiver group?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is staying healthy for Aryan. You know, he just hasn't been on the field long enough. As a developmental player, he is fast, he is athletic, he is a great kid, but not being healthy and being out there to develop. So what that does is that restricts you from a player being an every down player. You know, I just said player, an every down player, to get on the field more often, because you can't trust them in everything that you're asking them to do. So they have to be, how do I say this, situational players, if that makes sense. You have situational players and you have every down players. And because there's more that goes into it, okay, you go fast, right? The player's got to know what to do, okay? So we're looking to bridge that gap from being a situational player to a player we can trust to be out there in more than just when you want to use his explosiveness and to threaten the defense. And it comes with that in the run game. You put him out there, it's like, you know, are they going to play a 2-shell? Are they going to play an extra safety back that allows you to run the ball more effectively if they don't want to put, you know, a number of guys in the box and allow him more space?
Hey Coach, after losing a guy like James Cook as electric as he is, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you see the running backs you currently have contributing in the pass catching game.
Kenny's going to have to take more of that slack. It was nice having both of those guys a year ago, where their versatility. I think our other guys have improved dramatically in terms of their ball skills and route running ability, getting the ball to them down the field, and their ability to track it. That's probably as much as anything. James can really track it. That you can put him out there and feel good that if we threw it 40 yards downfield, that's completely different than most of the balls the running backs catch, which is right in front of them, intermediate, short. So Kenny, Dejon's really improved. So that is an area where we don't have as much depth. You know, when you had James, you didn't have to worry about in a given game plan, if one guy went down, that would be Kenny. Now, you know, the other guys have gotten better at it, but you've shrunk the margin for error. You'd hate to go into a game with all kinds of things you like for Kenny, and then all of a sudden something happens and you're stuck. So before we you know, when Kenny was healthy, we would have the luxury of having both of them.
Hey Todd, I know these overarching offensive philosophy storylines can be annoying, but obviously when you came here, Georgia's reputation was run. Your reputation, people thought, well, he's coming in to open up the offense and everything. What do you think about that, and where do you think you are entering year 3 in terms of melding what made Georgia before you got here and what the offense looks like under you now?
Actually, it's not a really rhetorical question. It's fair in the fact that I do like to throw it. I think people think that I don't like to throw it. And I'm paid to score. I'm not paid to win, pardon me. I'm paid to add as part of that, but to score. But I'm also paid to be responsible to winning. And so there's a big part of that where they think that Kirby dictates what we do on offense. No, he dictates that we be smart. He dictates that we be explosive and that we utilize our personnel to do everything in our power to win games for the University of Georgia. And that's what we should be doing. And believe me, when I'm thinking game plan wise, I'm thinking about how we can be explosive, and yet how we can run the ball to help us be explosive. It all fits together. And you can't control the game if you can't run the ball comfortably. You can't. You cannot control the game. You can have a bunch of statistics that make it look better, make you feel better, but if you can't run the ball comfortably, you can't win the game. And that's from a guy who likes to throw it. And my whole background's wideouts and quarterbacks. So I do want to throw it. I enjoy throwing it. 2 years ago against Mississippi State here, we couldn't run it. We didn't run it very good at all. That was on me. We threw for 400 yards, thank God, and we won the game. Cincinnati, we turned it over a bunch and didn't run it nearly as well. Well, luckily we could throw it. I think the biggest thing is, are you able to, when you're not having success at one or the other, you're not just one-dimensional. You're not just a running team where, okay, we get behind, we're having trouble throwing it, or we're a passing team that when we have to run it, we can't. But, you know, it's out there. It's part of it. It's unfair because you have to do whatever you need to do to win the game, and that's be explosive and not turn it over.
So what's like Bobo's value to what you have to do offensively? Kind of what's the give and take with the guy that's obviously has some success as an offensive play caller as well? You know, how is he adding to your knowledge base and then vice versa?
Well, first of all, he's an unbelievable sounding board. Like any experienced coach that you bring in, whether it was last year defensively with Will Muschamp or with us, Buster Faulkner, anybody that you bring in as a sounding board, okay, what have you done? Are we doing everything in our power to be successful? Our walkthroughs, I asked him today, all right, we're working on pressures and how we're going to adjust to it. And I'm like, I walked right over to him, I'm like, okay, what are we missing? Is there anything that you guys did that was different? Is there any way how you walked through in the past? Are we utilizing every opportunity to be successful? And he's been great, because I'm sure, you know, just like with Buster or anybody that's done it for as long as he's done it, that in some ways, I'm sure he's enjoying being back here. And there's other ways it's like, okay, well, maybe I wouldn't do it that way, maybe I wouldn't, but he's been awesome. You know, he's been awesome as a sounding board, and I want to continue that. He's going to have a big part in what we do offensively and adding to that. We had a little bit of a shorter off season with guys coming in, so we haven't had probably as much time to be like, okay, let's really dive in to certain aspects of it. But I think those spots where everybody you have in your organization has to add value. Well, where is their value? Where is their unique value, whether it's recruiting, whether it's player development, whether it's offensive game planning, whatever that is. If they don't have an elite trait that adds to it, they got to go. So somewhere in that, they've got to have some reason why they're in our building. And I didn't mean to kind of end on that with Mike Bobo. I mean, I'm just saying he adds tremendous value in terms of just in terms of being a sounding board for us.
Hey, Coach. Just kind of wanted to know through your eyes, Dominic Blaylock's progression, getting back to full health, getting him back involved, what he's looked like to you and how much his perseverance is meant to both himself and the team.
You know, that I can't imagine. You know, I can't imagine getting hurt, getting re-injured 2 years, probably a lot of times question whether or not, what if I do all this again? What if I do all this and it happens again? And I'm sure every day, if anybody's ever played basketball and you roll your ankle, you don't jump for a month. Imagine tearing your ACL and then you do it again. Like how long that's going to take from the mental side, forget the physical side of being able to just get out there and go. Over time, he's gotten to the point where I think he feels more and more comfortable. And he's always been a crafty route runner. He's probably more crafty than he is like fast or tall. It's just he has a knack. Some guys just have a knack of getting open, making plays, contested catches. And you can see that every day that he's out there.
I know it's only been 6 or 7 practices. What's your evaluation of these freshman running backs, Andrew Paul and Branson Robinson, so far?
I think they're going to be really good players. It always hurts. What's interesting is whenever this started 10, 15 years ago, when players came at mid-semester, at one point there was 4 or 5 of them and you had 18 or 20 that didn't come. Well, now it's the reverse of that. You have most of your class comes at mid-semester. So you're so used to freshmen being up to speed a little bit more, but missing the spring takes its toll on any player that's not here because you're asking a lot of them. I think they're both going to be tremendous players. They're working awfully hard at their craft, but every day we install, summer's not the same. It's really not because you're not the physical part. Every day we install, the defense installs. And as you keep going, it just compounds the looks. It's one thing if we kept the same plays and they changed, or vice versa, right? But now they're changing looks, we're changing plays. It's like, holy cow, you can become overwhelmed. And it's hard then at that point to really see their true skill set because they're processing. They're not playing fast, but I think they're both going to be tremendous players.
Coach, can you tell us when last year you knew that you could win a title with Stetson Bennett? And then secondly, what have you seen from Gunnar Stockton and Brock Vandegrift. We don't see a whole lot of them. Can you
Yeah.
tell us about their development?
So I think that's, as we got going in the year, it's funny I've been on teams where we struggled, we weren't where we needed to be, and when you're going up against the same guys, you have no way of knowing, like, really how good you are. Like, you may think you're really good or you think you're really bad, but you have no idea because it's the same dudes. And then after a while, you're like, we're really not very good. Or then you're going a while and you're like, okay, like, there's days of practice last year I'm going, God, I don't think we're very good. Or, I don't know if we're very good. You just like playing. After a while, you're like, when we play other people, you're like, no, actually, we're really good. And I mean that collectively as a team. I think there's a moment, irrespective of the quarterback, where you're like, okay, we're really good on defense, and we can be really good on offense. Now when that happened, that was a few games into the year. Sure as hell wasn't after Clemson, but after a few games, you started feeling that. You started feeling, I think we can be pretty good. And irrespective of who the quarterback was, because both of them were good players. It was never like where you thought, boy, it's this much or the other. So, as we kept going along, we thought that, Stetson's mobility gave us a chance, a little bit different in terms of who we were going with. But at some point I thought, no, we can win it with either one of those at quarterback. Okay, you were asking about Brock and Gunnar, or were you asking about Carson? We asked which one?
The two younger ones.
Okay, so
we haven't
Brock,
seen as much of them.
both are tremendous players. Brock, obviously, he's been here longer, but his playmaking ability is tremendous. I mean, he's got a chance, just like Gunnar does. I think both of them have a chance to be a tremendous players here. I really do. They're different in the way they go about it, and their personalities, which is normal. You're never going to have. You could have three kids and they have different personalities, all of them. So you have the same thing at quarterback, but you love them all. It's kind of that way. Like, all right, this one's a little more quiet, this one goes about it, and this one's a little more outgoing, and but both of them are going to be tremendous players. It just stinks because I think we have a really good quarterback room. People look at it and think like, well, they don't have a good quarterback room because Stetson Bennett is playing. No, Stetson's a really good player. Those guys are really good players. And I think they're going to continue to get better. And we ask a lot of them. We do a lot of quarterback control here. So there's a lot that we ask them to do, which makes it hard initially.
Coach, back to the tight ends again. It's a fascinating position group of guys you got in there. And last year, you pretty much warned us what Brock Bowers was and how many different ways you could use this guy. Now we see Arik Gilbert out there. Darnell's obviously healthy. I mean, how different? I mean, I know it's called tight end, but it sure does look like you've got different positions within the positions. And how does Gilbert shake out? We saw red zone usage in G-Day, but outside of that, what do you see ahead for him?
Well, Arik, a lot like Brock, is a unique talent. Their skill set. Arik's a little bit different in that Arik has wide receiver background and route running. Good with the ball in his hands, run after catch. Where Brock's background is more get the ball in his hands, H-back, full-back, run after catch is probably the difference. So as Brock needs to continue to develop his route running, he's one of those guys just get in his hands. And he's got better catch radius than I thought, where Arik is more of a route runner. He's been in that, in terms of what he's developed, almost like an air raid Y, So that's been a part of that. Both of them have unique skill set. We didn't know exactly what we had with Brock. We knew he was rare in how he worked and how every day he came. How that developed and kept going, just we kind of fell into it, as he just kept going, we knew he was fast, and then all of a sudden that UAB catching around, I don't know, that's different. The GPS says one thing in the field, feel like, wow, that's pretty good. We got to keep trying that, or I'm just an idiot. And not even Darnell, because Darnell's a unique talent, but he has the foot issue, and you can't use him, and he's a unique talent. And keeping him healthy, keeping all those guys healthy, because they're different. That's probably the best way to put it is, who are your unique skill sets that you can take advantage of matchups. That Wes Welker at one time was an X for the Dolphins. And trading him to the Patriots turned him into a Hall of Famer playing the F position. Certain guys, certain backs, if you utilize their skill set, you're going to enable them to excel, and that's what we're paid to do.
Take two more questions.
Hey Todd, want to ask you about the offensive guard position. How do you see both the left and right guard spots sort of working out, and how is Tate Ratledge, especially as he's come back from his foot, progressing at that right guard?
Well, I'll start with Tate, because Tate obviously missing, other than like 4 plays at the Clemson game for a whole year. That's going to take its toll from a mental standpoint. He was still a young player. It's not like he's Jamari Sawyer and an older player. So mentally, he's got to work back into it. He has all of the attributes you want. He's just got to get himself back going again, because I don't care how much you're in meetings. I don't care how much you're watching. You're not actually executing. You know, if you're an elite rifleman, you can't watch people shoot the damn gun. You got to shoot it, and he's got to get out there and do it. And so getting out there, I think, helps that. We have a lot of depth at guard and tackle. I mean, we can be elite up front. We have a lot of really, really good players up front. And now we're just working through it. I don't want to mention names because I'll miss somebody in saying it, but we have a lot of really, really talented football players up front. Now it's piecing that together where we can really function as one.
Todd, last been made about not having 1,000-yard receivers. Is it just kind of inevitable, and do you like it that the ball gets distributed a lot of different places, even if that kind of quashes some individual accomplishments?
I really don't go into it that way, but I get it. I get skilled players. I've coached them all my life. If you're in basketball, you want to score. If you're in baseball, you want to hit. And if you're a skill guy, you want to touch the football. I mean, I get that. And I understand certain skill guys' frustrations when they don't, because that's their value. When I was at Oklahoma State 2011, Justin Blackman won the Blaylock, and he had like 1,700 yards. And then the next year we had Josh Stewart who had 1,000 yards. So now different offenses, more air raid-like. Mike Evans has a few more games, but it doesn't come with that. I would have guessed that we had George, we would have had a 1,000-yard receiver, and we had him all year because he's a unique skill set. When you get into run, play action, and utilizing matchups like we had a number of guys that way, it's almost inevitable you're not going to have somebody do that. It's like, I'm going to compare it to one thing before we have to break here, is that I find it really intriguing because it's the same there, because it's easy to pick on. It's like, no matter which way you go, I found this in the NFL, like you create this with quarterbacks where the touchdown to interception ratio exists, and yet everybody knows that if you get in the red zone, your best red zone teams are able to run the football in. It's like, well, how does that make any sense? If you're really good at running it and you run for touchdowns, and yet the quarterback only throws for 17 touchdowns but 10 picks, well, he could have had 10 more, we just didn't need to. And I know I'm just kind of like, it is what it is. The idea is that for us, and it's frustrating for our players, is to score as much as we can, be explosive, utilize the skill sets we have. We get in the red zone scoring touchdowns, whether we have to throw it or run it. And the rest of it is for talk, not really in terms of the value of what it really means. And I get what you're saying, Todd. I really do. And you'd love to have somebody, that you can count on that, okay, this guy's going to win if they single him. And, we had to be creative last year with who that is. Is that Brock? Is that AD? Just like this year. So we'd love to have, last year at Southern Miss, we had a 4,000-yard passer and 2,000-yard rushers. That's elite, but you'd love to have that, but sometimes it just doesn't work itself out that way.
Thank you.